Peace be unto you. Welcome back to the channel. I'm back with another video. This time, video 2003 in the series, in the number 19 series, is about the letter Sod. It's pronounced like an S, but has a bit more rounded sound, and in the database, it's managed as a letter C. So there are 3 chapters in the Quran that have these mysterious initials. In Arabic, they call them Huruf al-Muqatta'at, which basically means disjointed letters, and they exist in 29 chapters of the Quran, of the 114 chapters. So in particular, these 3 chapters, chapter 7, Al-Araf, has an initial Alif Lam Mim Sad. So that's where the Sad is. And then chapter 19, about Maryam, mother of Jesus, also in biblical terms, Mary. And the initials there are Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad. It's got 5 initials, but it does have the Sad at the end. And then again, chapter 38 has the Sad by itself. And these are what we call the mysterious initials, and is a particular phenomenon in the Quran. So the question is there a letter Sad number 19 pattern? Now, graphically, just to present it a little bit more visually so we can see what the claim is, that if you look at the 3 chapters, there's a count of 97 in chapter 7 of number of Sads. Chapter 19 has 26 and chapter 38 has 29. If you add them all up, you get 152 letter Sads in these 3 Sad initial chapters, right? Now, 152 has a particular phenomenon. The claim is that obviously if you divide 152 by 19, you get 8, which is a factor, an exact factor. That's a multiple of 19. That's where, if you have seen my series on the letter Qaf, and how that underplays, it's a very similar pattern, but this time we're maintaining the consistency. So this is basically, in a graphical sense, what the claim is. Now, as per cadence, what we normally do in my videos is we go and look at the data behind in the Quran and run SQL, which is structured query languages. So summarizing it in essence, what we're going to do is we've identified, according to this claim, that there are 3 chapters, chapter 7, 19, and 38, that have the Sad initials in it. And there's only one claim. The claim is that the number of Sads in these 3 chapters will add up to a particular number, which will be divisible by 19. Now, like I said before, SQL structured query language is what we're going to use. I've got a Quran database that I've set up. Now, if you haven't seen my video 000 SQL setup, which basically explains all of that, the entity relationship diagram of the Quran, how I set it up, where I got the data from, the detail is in that video, so you can watch that on my channel. Now, summarizing this up, basically this is how I always present it. The claim is in the book, Quran, the Final Testament, and also Quran, the Visual Presentation by of the Miracle by Rashid Khalifa. Like I say, I'm not a particular follower or disciple of Rashid Khalifa. He did some fantastic. He was basically the pioneer, and the proponent of the number 19. He did all these discoveries. It doesn't mean he owns them. Albert Einstein may have done E is equal to mc squared. Doesn't mean he owns light. So, or he invented light, for example, right? That was just his work. So this is what Dr. Rashid Khalifa did. Chapter 19, 38, and that first one should have been, I believe, chapter 6. Anyway, we'll get into detail a little bit. So what we'll do is the total number of Sad is claimed to be 152, and 152, if you do it on a calculator, 19 times 8. So the play on the number 19, and that it's a factor of 18. So that's the claim, right? So what we'll do is we will go over to SQL. Before we go there, like I said, if you haven't seen my videos on how my database is set up, you can go there and it'll explain how the rest of the segment is done. But bear with me, I'll explain it. It's very simple. You don't need to know SQL. You don't need to understand the syntax. I'll talk you through. In the database, just be aware that the letter C is the transliterated form of the letter Sad, which is the Arabic equivalent. Okay, so what we'll do is I'm going to switch over to SQL now. So here's my SQL setup. As per before, basically a very quick 2-second rundown. I have a chapters table related to verse, and verses basically number of verses are contained in a chapter. Then I've got Revelation City, which is connected to chapters. Basically, it's just a little bit of metadata around which city the verses were revealed in, which chapter was revealed in. And I've got a couple of character tables, 3 character tables, which basically underpin all the actual alphabets in the database, the Quran. And then we have the 2 word aggregate tables, which basically is a churn function that I've run through, which collates and stores all the information about every word that's used and all its attributes around how many times, which chapter, which verse. So these are the main tables that I rely on to do all my verifications. There's also lots of stored procedures, user-defined functions underpinning all the other calculations. So let's go and look at the scripts that I've already pre-prepared. So I'll talk you through this. What we'll do is first of all have a look at the metadata of what we're going to do. Now, so the claim was about the chapters, that contains these letter Sad as its mysterious or huruf al-muqattat. The first thing we'll do is I'll run this query, which basically says, go to the chapters table, show me any chapter that has isolated letters or these disjointed letters, and it must contain the letter Sad in it. So that's the like pattern in here, which basically says it have a Sad in it. I run it, have a look. So this basically shows us that messages step 3 rows return. So we have 3 chapters, and I'll read it out to you. Chapter 7, Al-Araf. Chapter 19, Maryam. Chapter 38, Sad. And you can see the Arabic Quranic initials here. You can see the Sad is appearing in all 3. One of them has Sad by itself, but the other 2 chapters, chapter 7 and 19, have a Sad, but it has other letters with them. Alif Lam Mim, which is ALM. Again, the Sad is represented in the transliterated form as a C. Now, the chapter 19, chapter Maryam, people would know about this. Mary, this chapter is named after the mother of Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad. So these are the 3 chapters, right? That's the first query, just to give you a little bit of rundown and information before we get into the analytics. Now let's have a look at a little bit more about these 3 chapters, 7, 19, and 38. Remember them? And as you can see, that was the same thing we were looking at before. A little bit more information. The first one, it's more description, is about the heights, the faculty of discernment, chapter Maryam and Sad. So these are a little bit of information about this chapter from the chapters table. Now if we go to the verses table, we can have a look, and I've just selected the first verse in each of these 3 chapters that are of interest to us. And you can see the very first, because it's a Quranic initial chapter, it will call out the letter Sad in it. So you can see that the very first verse in chapter 7 will be Alif Lam Mim Sad. So that's just a a rundown of 4 letters. It doesn't have any sentence meaning. So obviously people have always wondered what these are. Particular thread I'm taking is there's a numerical significance to it, which is what I'm trying to validate in terms of the claims made by people like Dr. Rashid Khalifa. Chapter 19, as you can see, the very first verse number 1 on 19, actually basically calling out the 5 initials, Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad. In English would be Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad. Okay, so it's like a K and a H, a Y, a heavy A and a rather rounded C. Okay, or an S. Then you can see the chapter 38 starts with the Sad, and then there's an oath by God, by the Quran, full of admonition. This is the truth. Okay, so that's basically a view of the chapter. Now, one thing I just wanted to quickly show with you, let's have an understanding of what the chapter character ID is of Sad, topic of interest. So this is a selection of all the Arabic characters in the database, the way I've represented them in Hijai order. There's also sorry, that's in abjadi order, and there is alif is always the beginning, but you can see ya over here. The thing that we're of interest is swad, sounds like that, swad, with a rounded mouth, and English character is C, and that's has a geometrical value of 90. The gematria I covered in another chapter. If you want to look up gematria on Wikipedia or anything like that, Arabic gematria will show you the weighted number C. So swad has a weight of 90. Okay, so that's basically a little bit of metadata check. Next thing what we'll do is get right into validating these claims. Right, so what we're going to do is look at the SARD initial chapters, work out if we can tally up all the SARDs in them and see if that claim about 19 times whole number results in a value. Just a couple of little information here about number 19. 19 is an odd number, a prime, and precisely the 8th prime. It's also the 7th odd prime, right? So there's some significance about 19, 7, and 114. These are special numbers in the Quran. They seem to have some encoding. The claim is in this book, the Last Testament and the Visual Miracle. Actually, that's the book, Quran Visual Presentation of the Miracle. Obviously, there's a lot of YouTube channels that also talk about it. What I'm doing here is a little bit different. I'm actually going to take all these claims that people are just throwing out and proving whether they're true or false. Okay, so the very first query we will do is sum up all the Arabic character and the English equivalent. This is a way to verify that, because I have both in the database. It's always good to counterbalance and counter check against the English letters, which makes a lot more sense, or perhaps to a Western audience. I'll do a division of 9 by 19.0 to show you if it is divisible by 19. And what we're going to do is only look at chapter number 7, 19, and 38, which is what we found in our metadata check. And the character that we're interested in, the alphabet we're interested in the database, is represented as a character of 18, which is the letter swad, which is checked before, right? Let me just run this query. Now you can see that chapter 7 has 97 swad, 26 and 19, and chapter 38 has 29. And you can see both the English and the Arabic match up. But you can see that dividing each one by itself by 19 is not a whole number. So that in itself is not divisible by 19. But the claim isn't that. The claim is about the total, right? But individually, each chapter's counts are not divisible by 19. Just wanted to call that out first of all. What we'll do, we'll take exactly the same query. And this time, instead of summing it by chapter, we'll take the chapter criteria out. Okay, one group by chapter anymore in the next one. So here we go, same query. We're selecting the number of, and I'm using the table I'm using is my QChar count, which is a aggregate table that in my database diagram I showed you. This time I'm going to use this. I'll use other ways to also verify, so that I'm not pulling a wool over your head. So if you have a look now, we're doing a total only. So you can see 152 is the count, which is equal to the claim that was made in the book. Both the English and the Arabic totals are exactly the same. The division by 19, you get a result 8. So it is a whole number. So it is 152 is divisible by 19. Two factors, 19 and 8, will give you 152. So that's the claim proven. Also, there is the gematria sum here. Gematria is basically the weighted value SARD. And actually, divided by 19, you sum it up and divide by 19, you get 720, a whole number. So that's a bonus sort of finding, that the gematria, the weighted value, is also divisible by 19. That's quite amazing in terms of if you know what's happening in the actual numerical pattern here. That is an amazing finding. Now I just want to call out that this 8, which is one of the factors, also is a resounding sort of finding, because the 8th prime is also 19. So over here I've given you a little bit of view. The first prime obviously is 2. 1 is not considered prime number. You've got to have two factors, two exact factors. That's what a prime number is. So the 8th prime in the sequence is number 19. Now, this time what we're going to do, so I've used my aggregate char count table to prove this count, but you can say, well, you could just put numbers in there. So what we'll do this time is I'm going to use a string pattern matching of the verse table. So this contains all the verses in the Quran. So we're going to say in chapter 7, 9, and 38, the 3 Sad initial chapters, go in there, and I'm using a len function, and I'm doing a replace here. This is a smart little way of finding the letter Sad in verse by verse, right? And I'm just doing each one of them. And I'm also doing the English equivalent with the letter C, which represents the Sad in the transliterated form. So running that is just a verification, a cross check, by the way. Running, and you can see we get the same numbers, 97, 26, and 29 in each of the chapters. And we showed before that that adds up to 152. Now, another way to verify this is I've got some user-defined functions, which given a particular character ID, 18 is for Sad, letter C, and don't specify the verse number. It does all the verses in the Quran and all the chapters. I'm going to sum that up, obviously limiting it to these 3 chapters because that's what we're interested in, because those 3 are the Sad initial chapters. Now I'm going to run that, and you will notice, quickly show you that the letter Sad has an ID, character ID of 18, and it has a geometrical value of 20. That was just why I'm using 18 from up there into here. The user-defined function which accepts a character ID, and if you specify chapter number and verse number, but in this case I'm just saying every verse, every chapter, limited to 7, 19, and 38, running that over here, and we'll get 97, 26, and 29 as the individual chapter counts, and the English and the Arabic match up. This that tally is 152, which is same as before. Now, what we looked at before was around the idea that weighted value, as I showed you before, of the letter Sad, gematria is 90. So if you take 90 and multiply by 152 occurrences of it and divide it by 19, you will see that we get 720, right? So the total gematria value is 13680. Divide that by 19, you get a whole number. This is a bonus find that the geometrical value of the Sad in all the chapters is also divisible by 19. Neat little find. Now we're going to just do a quick wrap up now. In terms of what is the data behind all of this, I just wanted to show you all the chapters where chapter 7, all the verses in which chapter 7, 19, and 38, and the character 18, which is Sad character. Just let me run this query and I'll talk to it. So you can see this is where all those numbers are coming from. In the char count table, basically every chapter, I've got every character in there. So you can see I'm limiting it to show me in chapter 7, verse 0. Was there any Sad in it? It shows 0, but verse 1 had 1, and so forth, all the way chapter 7. Keep going down to the next chapter, chapter 19 now. Then if you keep going, that's chapter 38. So these are all the counts of Sad in these char count tables. So that's what I have showed you in the calculation, but this is basically, can see 395 rows. So that's where the actual aggregate is happening in counting these numbers. Now, if I were to just sum that up, just to show you the same query without listing it down like this, how do we know what the count is? I'm just summing exactly the same query and adding it all up. You will end up with this 152 is matching both in the Sad in the Arabic and the C in the English, transliterated, and it's divisible by 19. So that's pretty much the SQL part of it done. So I will go back and wrap up the video with the presentation. So went to the demo. What did we do? We did verify that chapters 7, that should be 7, sorry, 9 and 38, the 3 SOAD chapters contain a total number of 152 SOADs, right? And 152 is a multiple of 19 exactly, by 8. The gematria bonus finding was that with the value of SOAD being 90, you get a total geometrical value of the number of SOADs in these 3 SOAD initial chapters is 13,680, which is actually divisible by 19 exactly by 720, multiple of 19. We also noted that the 8th prime number, which is the multiple up here, is also pointing at 19. So as you can see in my 3 rows here that I have shown that there is a numerical phenomena going on. Okay, so in conclusion, wrapping this up, one claim verified that number 19 is encoded. That was the main claim in the chapters 7, 19, and 38. The bonus, we found the total gematria value is also encoded, and we also noted that the multiple 18 that came up in the finding is also pointing to the number 19 is 8th prime. Now, what's coming up next? So, God willing, inshallah, number 19 series, why 19? So, talking about 19, I haven't produced this video yet around why 19 is the phenomenon that's been spoken of in these videos, and people are attesting to on the YouTube channels and other documents and books as well. I intend to do another video 2005 series on chapter Yasin, which is Y and S, and to show that there is a phenomenon, or to prove or to debunk if there is a phenomenon there. Please watch video 000 on my channel, which shows the SQL setup if you're a little confused about what I'm doing. Okay, so wrapping this up, if you like what I'm doing, please give it a like. Thank you very much. Subscribe. And also, if you've got any questions, any comments about what I'm doing, if there's anything that didn't make sense, please post it. I'm quite happy to entertain questions. You know, as long as it's respectful and considerate. We're all here to learn. I'm here to learn. That's it for today. I reason, therefore I am. Peace be unto you.